The Prophet Muhammad, when sharing his wisdom with his followers, with his audiences, said very clearly that infectious diseases, contagious diseases, are not real. This is abundantly reported. In one of those instances, Muhammad said, "There is no infection, no hama, no other promising rain, and no serpent in a hungry belly." Giving each other diseases is just superstition. It's stupid. Don't believe in it. In another instance, he says the same thing again. He says there is no infectious disease, there is no safar, no hama. One of these is the belief that pain in the stomach is caused by an evil demon, and the other, again, something superstitious. And of course, infectious diseases are also a superstition like those. Why would you believe in something like that? According to another report, he says again that there are no infectious diseases and no bad omens. According to another report, he said one thing does not infect another. And again, according to another report, he said there is no hama, no infection, and no evil omen. If there is in anything an evil omen, it is a house, a horse, and a woman.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Here is another one of Ridwan's exceptional arguments. In most of his arguments, Ridwan needs his audience help in order for his arguments to work. For example, in this hadith, Ridwan reads out the hadith and makes his own interpretation, his own conclusion, and then he needs his fanboys, his audience, to help him by accepting his interpretation of the hadith. And then he will present the Islamic counter-argument and will say stuff like, it's absurd. And again, he will need his audience help. He will need them to accept that it's absurd. So just now we saw the interpretation of Ridwan for the Prophet ﷺ's hadith. Now we will see how he presents the Islamic counter-argument and how he responds to it.
Now, some Muslims try to jump in and save Muhammad again from embarrassment by saying that Muhammad affirms somewhere else that diseases spread. They refer to two cases. One of them is, again, one form of these reports in which the report somehow includes the words of Muhammad that you shouldn't put healthy and sick people together. But that seems like a later addition to the text, which is not found in these original reports.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. I think we should have Sahih Ridwan, because now, MashaAllah, Ridwan is telling Muslims which part of a hadith is a later addition and which part is authentic. Amazing, MashaAllah. So in this case, Ridwan claims that the part where the Prophet ﷺ says a sick person should not be taken to one who is healthy is a later addition. It's not found in original reports. It's only found in fabricated, unreliable reports. Well, Ridwan, read your own source. It says Sahih Muslim 2221. Sahih Muslim. Sahih Muslim is a reliable source, Ridwan. You're really an embarrassment to anti-Islam polemic. But no problem, if you think that this hadith of Muslim is fabricated, unreliable, and you want us to show you other reports, no problem, Ridwan. I will show you now another report which talks about the same hadith. This is Bukhari and this is Sunan Abi Dawud. This is from Bukhari again. Ibn Majah. Another report in Muslim. And finally from Muwatta Malik. So this second report, which says that a sick person should not be taken to one who is healthy, exists in original reliable hadith. So what I will suggest to you, Ridwan, is stick to Googling. You know, the science of hadith, which hadith is reliable, which hadith is original, is far, far beyond your level. You stick to Googling. Let's now watch the second response Ridwan had to the Muslim counter-argument.
The second thing that they would be referring to is that Muhammad said that when a plague breaks out in a specific land, then you should not flee from that land and you should not go to that land. And by that, of course, you could understand that diseases spread. And Muhammad made this amazing suggestion that you should not go there because you could contract the disease, and you should not leave that place because you could spread the disease. But in that case, Muhammad doesn't actually say what Muslim apologists today want us to think, he said. Narrated by Aisha, I asked Allah's apostle about the plague. He told me that it was a punishment sent by Allah on whom He wished, and Allah made it a source of mercy for the believers. For if one in the time of a plague stays in his country patiently, hoping for Allah's reward, and believing that nothing will befall him except what Allah has written for him, he will get the reward of a martyr. According to another report, he says that a plague was something that was sent as a punishment upon people, like a group of the children of Israel before. And now if you learn that a plague broke out somewhere, then you should not go to that place, because that place is being punished. And if you are in that place, then you should not flee from that place, because the plague is sent to that location, and fleeing the plague is like fleeing the battlefield. What you are supposed to do is to trust that Allah will not unjustly punish you. Even if He kills you, He will reward you with heaven, and you will become a martyr. What Muhammad does here is not to say, the plague is infectious, people infect each other, so better go inside and stay in your house. No, what he says is, this is a targeted punishment from Allah, and you should trust in Allah. This is not good advice, this is not medical advice, this is ignorance. And with this, assuming that these Islamic reports are true, and by Islamic standards they are to be trusted, we can conclude that Muhammad was an unreliable, ignorant person of his time, and that he cannot be trusted as the Prophet of Allah, who is inspired and instructed to speak nothing but the truth. Muhammad was a false prophet. Thanks for watching. If you want to support what I'm doing,
Now, this is wallahi hilarious. So the Prophet ﷺ says that if a plague breakout spreads in a land, don't go to that land. And for people who are in that land, don't leave that land. Okay? And the conclusion, the interpretation Ridwan gave is, it's just because it's a punishment and you should not flee a punishment because you are a believer. That's the only reason. Okay, that's your interpretation for why you should not leave the place. Now let me ask you, what about those who are not allowed to go inside? Let's, for argument's sake, accept this ridiculous interpretation. What about people who are not allowed to go inside? Also, you're making a new fatwa that if a punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal was sent upon a place, Muslims are not allowed to leave that place. Where did you get that from? Show me a single evidence from the Islamic sources, from the Islamic scholars, who says that if a punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal were sent down on a land, we should not leave that land. And a punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal could be in the form of a storm, earthquakes, floods, whatever. We should not leave that place. Show me. You're just making up stuff as you go, Ridwan. There is nothing in the Islamic fiqh which says that if Allah Azza wa Jal sends a punishment upon people and you were there among these people, you should not leave that place. For example, Allah Azza wa Jal commanded His Prophet Lot to leave the place where Allah Azza wa Jal would send His punishment to. As I told you, Ridwan's arguments are so pathetic that they need help in order for them to work. Now, are we done? No, we're not. We will have to bury this argument once and for all. Let me read you this hadith from Bukhari. Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, there is no adwa, nor is there any bad omen, nor is there any hama, nor is there any bad omen in the month of Safar. And one should run away from the leper as one runs away from a lion. A leper is someone who is infected with disease, with some sort of disease. Prophet ﷺ says in the same hadith where he says there is no adwa, in the same hadith he says that you should run from this person as you would run away from a lion. And Bukhari and the Prophet ﷺ and all the companions do not see any contradiction between the two. There is no contradiction between saying there is no adwa and between running away from a person who's infected with this kind of disease. Why? Because the interpretation of there is no adwa is different from Ridwan's ridiculous interpretation. The interpretation is that there is no adwa without the willing and permission of Allah Azza wa Jal. So Ridwan, you failed again to provide your first valid argument against Islam. All these years we have been waiting for your first valid argument against Islam. Please, if you like the video, click the like button, subscribe to the channel and share it. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.